Morning, it's Friday, March 20th. This is the second of two public broadband committee meetings for the town of Dryden. The first meeting is the report on the previous month, which we did 2 weeks ago. This is more of the discussion, deeper dive meeting. And I believe the second to last one in our scheduled topics. So we talked about the budget, we talked about um, other things. Now we're talking about MDUs. Next month will be a touch on marketing, what we've been doing unless the committee wants to change that topic. And then it's kind of open from May through December on what topics we want to look at in this meeting. There is a lot of construction happening around town across both the Freeville expansion area and the make-ready work in the greater Dryden area. We could talk about that twice a month for the rest of the year. Um, and all the blockers and ways we're working our way through those blockers. But today we did decide that we're going to focus on MDUs, so I want to do that. Before we get started, I just want to leave it open for the Broadband Committee. Anything you would definitely want to make sure we cover today outside of MDUs while we're together? Otherwise, we'll push those topics to the first meeting in April when we do the March report.
I have a quick thing I need to just check with you, David, about that. I heard from the Dryden Rail Trail that one of our lines is not properly placed in a culvert near the NYSEG washout, and that this is a concern. Um, I'm not exactly sure where they're referring to. Maybe is Ray still with us?
Yeah,
Ray,
Ray's
you
here.
might
I think
know, but
it's east of Pinckney, between Pinckney and 366. There's the
Hmm.
big washout is there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
they did directional drilling under that, and it's probably a good 10 feet under the water level. So the grades on either side coming to the bridge are already accounting for staying a few feet above the underground cable.
um, I think we must be talking about different places because I think
Okay.
what I was told, we were supposed to do directional drilling on this one, but we didn't. Instead, it's close to the bridge or the culvert, and it's not underneath. Um,
who told you this? Can you name names?
I think it was Todd Bittner
I guess
from the
which
rail
project,
trail.
like,
I'll follow up with you
The,
separately about
yeah,
this.
I mean, this
yeah.
it's too much of a wide open question to know what you're talking about, where and
Yeah.
who's and what's going on. But we can solve that, whatever's going on.
Okay.
And the dig thing that they should call, they should be all marked before anybody does any construction. So I hope
Yeah,
they call
all
dig
that is
about that.
true, Graham.
So
Yeah, all of our material locations has been provided to USIC for DigSafe. So if the trail is doing any digging, they call DigSafe, they would be able to mark out and locate all of our fiber. Um, yeah, but if he's like, here's the coordinates of where we think it is, then we can go back to our engineers and say, we think this is going on. We can go back to Syracuse Utilities and ask them if they didn't put conduit down, if they just put fiber without conduit,
Yeah,
or if they,
in this
yeah,
case, I think it was supposed to go directional, it was supposed to be underneath, and instead it's at the surface level and it's exposed. So,
it's exposed.
um, well,
Or
it's in a casing, but it's not something that's well protected. That's what I was told. And I said I'd bring it up to you, but
well,
yeah,
let's
I
we can
definitely
talk
bring it
about
up,
this later.
but probably good to do it
yeah, we
by,
don't want to slice across the backbone. Even though we've got some redundancy, that would not be good. So
yeah, I'd say definitely
Yeah.
an email introduction with you, me, and Todd, and anyone else who's involved with this conversation.
Yeah.
Say like at this coordinate location, we can see the strand or the fiber or the conduit or something at the surface. It needs to be dealt with.
Okay.
Otherwise, it becomes a bit of a hearsay of who and what and where and what to do and what caused it and how to fix it.
Yeah, I think it's
And
real. It's just I got to get you the location. Um,
perfect. Yeah.
all right.
I mean, there's probably 75 miles of fiber out there and probably 30 or 40 miles underground. So knowing exactly where will be useful.
Okay.
we don't want you
Cool.
to walk the whole thing, Dave.
I'll send Connor out.
Oh, okay, you got
He'll do the north route and I'll do the south route.
I'll go walk it. I don't
We'll
have an
start at
issue
Town
with
Hall
that.
and we'll meet back at Pinckney.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll even take Mount Pleasant.
the problem is you might have to swim some of the way. That's the problem.
Oh, that's fine.
We'll wait till it gets warmer.
Yeah.
Colder, we can walk across the ice, uh, but not there yet. All right. Any other open ideas, questions? Okay. Let me see if I can share my screen. Perhaps, possibly. Zoom lets me. Okay. All right. MDUs. We've been talking about MDUs probably since I was helping out on the project with marketing a couple of years ago, because we looked at these as a big opportunity to grow the numbers. And at that point, marketing's goal was to help get more people signed up. What we learned soon after that was just because people want the service at MDUs doesn't mean we can easily provide service to those MDUs. As such, I believe we're only set up in 2 of these MDUs as of right now. I'm going to go through some of the definitions, talk about some of the examples. This is meant to be educational, but also a conversation. At the end, we'll look at, I believe, every MDU that we've identified as of like late last fall. Most of them are in the green zone. There's a few that are beyond the green zone that we'll be looking at later in the year. But like I said, if you have questions, just raise your hand or just unmute and ask so we can keep everything together. Keep educating on where we are. So I thought the first part would be useful is why this matters. And the key part is that MDUs are a high concentration of potential subscribers, literally hundreds and hundreds of potential subscribers on the platform. I think last count was over 300. And given that we only have about 530 customers right now, if we had access to all these MDUs, it would increase our total count by 60%. So obviously, this is critical for financial performance, as well as making sure we're reaching everyone, including renters and multifamily residents, people who um, may find the affordability of Dryden Fiber to be a key decision to use it. We want to be able to provide them access. And what we do know is these are a lot more complex than these single family homes that we're doing, whether they're rental properties or owner occupied, because it requires extra work, inside plant, outside plant, and property owner coordination. Uh, Bottom line, I think this is important for you to see and understand is that MDUs can accelerate the growth, the number of residents, parcels, people we're reaching, but it can also slow down the entire project as we put a ton of resources behind each of these MDUs to try to get them live. We'll talk about what that looks like as we go through this time together. So when we say MDU, the multiple dwelling unit, it means apartment buildings, both small and large, could be as small as 2 or 3 units, all the way up to 25, 30, 50 units. Mixed use are also MDUs, multiple dwellings. So if you think of like some examples of apartment buildings, there's a building called Lex, which is Concord, Lexington. It's over on Lake Street in the Village. It's also, the address is 121416 Lake. 2 individual buildings, 20 total units. That's the apartment building one to think about for apartments. For mixed use, both 2 East Main and 1 West Main. 1 West Main is the home of the Corner Brew, the cafe. It has 2 retail spaces on the ground floor and then 7 apartments upstairs. The 2 East Main location is where the sub shop is on the first floor and 2 apartments upstairs. Mobile home parks also count as multiple dwelling units. There are, according to the most recent map of the town of Dryden, which I believe is the official 2010 version, there are 15 mobile home parks in the town of Dryden. And those account for easily over 500 residents, probably close to 700, between Hanshaw Village that Graham mentioned, the park up in McLean, which is, I believe, actually, I don't know the name of it off the top of my head. It's on the list, as well as Hillside Acres in Varna, talking about hundreds of mobile homes inside one park. Senior housing, assisted living also counts as MDUs. The one we think about mostly in town of Dryden is Willowbrook on North Street in the Village. This is a 50 unit mobile senior 50 unit senior housing facility. And then any property with multiple units under one ownership is an MDU. What doesn't count? Single family homes, duplexes, and sometimes triplexes, standalone businesses, and sometimes duplex business centers. So any single family home, whether it's owner occupied or rental, is not a MDU. It's not multiple. Sometimes duplexes, you would think, oh, that's multiple, but it doesn't count to what we have as challenges because we access each unit from the exterior without any problem. Same thing with standalone businesses. Pine Ridge grocery store is a standalone business. It's on a multi. Same thing with their neighbor, the storage units next door to Pine Ridge on Route 38, also not a MDU. Business centers that are duplexes, for instance, Dryden Monument on West Main Street near the rail trail. That is both an MDU, but also isn't because we reach each unit individually from the exterior. Once we have sign off from the property owner, we can go to each unit directly without any additional engineering or design. Before we move on, any questions about what we're counting as an MDU versus not MDU? Okay. So let's talk about what makes non-MDUs easy. So single structures, single unit structures. On the exterior, you may or may not know what this looks like. This is the 8-port device. This lives in a handhole within our project. Each of the ports on there would connect to one individual home. In this particular case, 2 of the ports are being used. You can see in the lower row of ports, the left 2 have drop cables plugged right in. For the install to happen, the installer just plugs into this multi-port device. Then they run the cable across the yard or aerial from the pole to the home, down the side of the home. Then they drill a hole through the house. They have to look inside and outside with the homeowner where the hole is going to go into. Then they bring the fiber into the home. They find out where in the home they want to have the modem or the ONU, the optical network unit. They plug it into there, and then they finish off the outside with this gray box. So you can see the before and after exterior where we've added the NID, the outside box, where the fiber comes in at the house and then goes into the home and then into the SANA device. So this is the easy single family home install. I don't know. I know some of you have seen this because you're customers. I'm not sure if everyone else has this level of awareness, but I want to make sure that you see like this is basically the simple install. Plug it into one of these multi-port devices, bring it to the home, and plug it into the SANA box, the SANA device. Any questions on what this looks like as a very high-level extraction? Okay. So there are some variables that happen, and our installation company, Clarity Connect, has dealt with these really well. Uh, First is aerial or underground. If it's aerial, you'll see a bucket truck there for installs. You have to bring it in to figure out how we're going to plug into that multi-port device. If it's underground, if the handhole is frozen or if the conduit from the handhole to the home that it already exists is frozen, we have to wait until it's unfrozen or we can get into it. The crews do carry torches so they can melt away and open up these handholds in the winter.
Mhm.
After installation is completed for the underground installs, The fiber is left at the surface of the ground until DigSafe is contacted. After 3 to 5 days, there's markout. We know where the other utilities are. Then they will bury that line for the underground installs to the home. When we do an install, the installers hand a Welcome to Dryden Fiber postcard. It's different than the other postcards. This is like, now you have the service installed. Here's all about billing. And for those with underground installs, here's the details about when we're going to bury the line. Typically, unless it's wintertime, 3 to 5 days later after markouts, they'll bury that line. Other variables in single unit structures are the home material, the location of the existing utilities, and the exterior aesthetic. We do our best, and we, Dryden Fiber, with Clarity Connect, to listen to the homeowners about where and how they want to be attached to the home, where that exterior NIT is going to go, typically with other utilities, where it's going to get drilled into the home, and then following under, like, these guys go into basements, they go through crawl spaces, sometimes they go to attics. It's typically not like they just put a hole and it goes to a desk on the other side of the hole. It has to go sometimes through the home. So they work really closely with the homeowner to follow the line to wherever that homeowner decides they want to have their modem or their ONU. And then from there, they plug it into their Wi-Fi device. I put this note in the bottom of this, which is that installations are 90 to 100% of the total face time that a customer is going to have with Dryden Fiber. 90 to 100% of all like lifetime experience with us in person is going to be during this install. So we have to do it right. Clarity's done a great job of working with every individual installation like they're the only customer that they're focused on. This is not like just send someone out there and they'll take care of it. They really work through each of these installs. And I would say we have a very low rate of feedback on installs. Probably the only feedback I've received from installs is probably had a handful of calls, 3 to 4 calls in the last year of people who call me right after the install just to talk about how great it was because other utilities have not had provided that level of experience. So those are some of the variables we see in single unit structures that all will come into play when we talk about MDUs. We're really good at handling this with single family or single unit structures, but all these compound when we go to multi. Before I move on, any feedback or any questions on single use structure variables from your direct experience for some of you, or we're just seeing this for the first time? All right. So let's talk about MDUs. The core constraints are that we don't control the access, the property owners do. That means even though a tenant wants service, they can't grant us rights to go across the property or into the property itself. By that, the landlord then could decide access for not just one prospective customer, but for every tenant in the entire building or in the mobile home park. We know that it requires these things. First, easements for any underground work into the property to tell them, like, we're going to be here. This is a perpetual agreement that lets us connect to your property, as well as access agreements to getting into the building. Some of these buildings have utility rooms. We need to know how we're going to get in there. And then construction within the building. If we're going to be running lines, it's a lot easier when it's just one installer and the homeowner looking at their home install versus how are we going to get into the building to reach 5, 10, 20 units within the building. And then ongoing coordination. If there has to be a repair or replacement or any maintenance, how do we get in there to do that work? Who owns that? Who's responsible for that? How do we troubleshoot? And then this note is that this is much of a relationship problem as a construction problem. There's how we're going to do it, but also working with each property owner. And every single one is a little different. Even some property owners will treat different properties that they own differently because some are their marquee locations that they really care about the look and feel and the aesthetic of the installation. And some of them are like, just go for it. Each one's a little different. So before we dive into in these particular ones, I want to talk about some of the different options we've looked at and where we are right now. So option A is a full building deployment. We extend the fiber directly to the building or mobile home park. We would do the individual unit connections to each apartment or each mobile home. This is the best long-term solution that we do everything from end to end, from the road where that multi-port device is all the way to the individual units. Option B, edge of property only. This is where we build the property line. We say, like, we have service. If you want it, you have to do everything as a property owner. We're not going to do any wiring. We're not going to run any service to individual mobile homes. Uh, Limited real world usability is true because what we found is that property owners are not experts in deployment of fiber optic internet. They don't know how to do it. They don't know where it needs to go. They don't know any of the equipment that is needed. And when it comes down to the individual installation, uh, partitioning and having each ONU modem talk to our network, they're not going to have that. They're going to have to work with us on that anyway. The third is the bulk service agreement, where we just have one agreement that covers all the units. We're going to provide service to every single unit. Every unit will have internet included. It forces adoption because every unit gets it. The property owner pays a flat fee to us, but there are some policy implications as well as other usability implications of how we do this, including the revenue. It's substantially different when we do bulk service. On the one hand, we get all that revenue guaranteed every month, but it's less than it would be if we had each individual tenant as a customer. We currently only have one bulk services agreement in play. Everything else is in option A right now. Any questions about these different options that are out there?
David, has there been any additional interest in the bulk service agreements that we're aware of?
I'm only aware of one, and it's quite old. It's almost 2 years old since the property owner was like, I have a bulk service agreement with Spectrum and I get a little kickback. And we were like, well, we got to figure out how we're going to get service to your building before we figure out if we want to do that. And this was fairly early on, 2 years ago, when we had less than 50 customers. We're like, we kind of don't want to be dealing with that type of billing and servicing and having them basically buy it wholesale and resell it. And then we have to deal with support for each individual customer and dealing with the billing. So it's been a pretty limited ask. The only request right now has been from INHS for their Varna project called Creek Crossing at Freeze Road. We have a agreement with them. We're working through the contract with them. I heard from them this week. They did not break ground in February. They're currently planning on breaking ground sometime this summer. That would be our first and only bulk service agreement.
Yeah, that project has a site plan amendment before the planning board this next week.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't want to dive too much into that, but there
Yeah.
three
No,
bu- it's 3 buildings on the parcel, and the bigger building that has 37 units is where they want to have the utility room that would feed the other 2 buildings. However,
Right.
the construction order is to build the 2 smaller buildings first, get those up and running and filled, and then build the third building that has a utility room to feed the services to the first 2 buildings. Not a construction person or engineer, but it's going to make it challenging to not have the utility room
That's
to provide
yeah, that's going
services
to be
to the
that's
building.
going to be
So,
pretty yeah, that'll be pretty challenging.
yeah, so we're working on figuring out like how this actually would work with running the conduit through the ground while it's open for the construction to provide this network within their space. It basically answers the question of, given the challenges with existing structures, wouldn't it be easier if we got in early as they're building the building? So far, no. It's just as challenging with brand new construction as it is with existing construction.
Yeah, well, until you have a spec document written up, that'll be the case. So, we got to set a standard of what we're expecting there, I think. So, or yeah, to
Yeah,
allow both underground and the other thing. But
right. So technical, high level um, apartments. We think about apartments. The easiest one we think about is at 1062 Dryden Road. It is 20 units across 4 buildings with underground conduit that connects the buildings together, and it's on the rail trail where we have the service. Um, we we ideally have done unit level ONTs where each unit has their own fiber right to the unit, and then from there into the ONT device, and then into the Wi-Fi device, and then provide service to that apartment. However, that would require running fiber drop cables to every single apartment. In this particular apartment building, there are 20 units, and the walls, floors, ceilings are all sealed up. However, they did install um, Cat 6 when they first built the building, and we've tested it between one utility room within one of the 4 buildings and one apartment. We did find a port that worked where we could get service back and forth from the utility room through Ethernet to the
Mhm.
actual apartment. So each of these buildings has a different existing infrastructure with coax only. Some have chases, but most do not, where we could run in um, drop cables. Some have Ethernet. Some don't have anything. So that's the first part within the apartment buildings is how we get from a utility room, what electronics go in that utility room, and then how do we get it from there out to the individual units. And mobile home parks, this mini neighborhood model, um, there's a lot of existing private infrastructure to consider in mobile home parks. Typically, there are 7 when you add water, sewer, electrical, natural gas, cable TV, telephone, and the 7th one is often they have lighting districts that are all serviced underground. In most mobile home parks, you don't see any utility poles. All 7 of those are running underground, and there's a high level of reluctance from owners of mobile home parks to be adding an 8th utility underground, including the word never. Like things are working. Do not disturb them. We do not want to disrupt what's working with these existing 7 utilities underground. Uh, Obviously, there's these trade-offs of cost and scalability and ownership. Who owns the infrastructure once it leaves the road, both within these apartment buildings and in mobile home parks? If something gets damaged, who goes in and fixes it? Is it our infrastructure on their property? Is it their infrastructure that we're installing and giving to them? Whose responsibility for maintenance and repair, replacements? And if they extend to add another building on their campus or add more mobile homes, who pays for the expense of the expansion? All these are questions that we look at, as well as on the technical side. Do we have enough fiber? That's another question that is not even on here, which is a typical design of our network prior to Vantage would put an 8-port device in front of a building and treat it the way that you saw that example of a single family home where one drop cable goes to that home and provides service. The technology doesn't work necessarily if that one drop cable has to service 10 or 20 or 50 units. You would need to have more service coming into that building, and there might not be more service available on that multi-port device on the street. So we have to go back up the network chain, sometimes all the way back to the POP to figure out how much fiber can we spare to provide service for 20 apartments or 38 mobile homes. These other additional technical considerations that we've labeled as requiring engineering requires some fiber planning to figure out all the way back to the POP. Is there enough service available in this POP to provide service to this MDU and to 100% of the residents? Typically, if only one resident signs up, we could run service to them. But as soon as they're happy and their neighbors find out, we get to an immediate roadblock to say, well, we don't have any more ports available for your neighbors. So you win, the other 8, 10, 19, 37 units don't have anything. Given that's the case, we haven't built any single solutions for MDUs. We're only looking at what will service every unit within this MDU before we give it to any unit in the MDU.
So how many of them are constrained in this way that we didn't plan, that it wasn't planned for having enough ports on the MDUs? I mean, or is it all of them, or is it just a few of them? Or...
Depends on the technology solution, but it's easily would say it's a problem for 100% of them that were not planned.
But
Even a
I thought Van Vantif was going through to re-engineer the network that they were taking into account this
yes,
and
going
the
forward.
capacities.
However,
Okay.
Since Vantage came on, we don't have any new green zones. These are the ones we're talking about right now are all in the existing green zone that was designed by Hunt. So the Hunt work on this has major gaps in that
So uh,
every
the
one of these has cases where there's not enough ports to service all the customers, and additional electronics are needed to service each unit inside. I believe 1062 Dryden Road, which is Pine Ridge in the Varna community, was added to the green zone, I'm going to say around November of 24. No, I'm going to say around November of 23, and definitely by April 24. Like we're like, this is a multi-port. This is a 20 unit apartment building. It's been 2+ years and we still don't have a solution to bring the service. And this is a location on the backbone where there's, I believe, a 72 or 96 count fiber bordering their property. Yeah.
But if
Now,
it's along the backbone, you can pull, I mean, there's room to pull more cable through that. Is there not? Or is
so
there,
I
are we
believe
to
in the handhole. So this, like, I'll go through it. We can talk about that
yes.
case. I think it's the first one
Okay.
on the case studies. Yeah.
So I guess, Dave, the question is we've looked at our service where we basically give you an individual uh, um, port. I guess we could look at ameliorating the service for some of these places to say, oh, we'll give you a gigabit connection and then we split it through the Ethernet and then service people through that. So, I mean, that it is a slightly different service model, but if we, and we'd have to have a different price or some sort of something to deal with that, but that's an option which will get customers on board before we can fix all, or alter all this repulling of cable that's going to have to happen. So,
Yeah. This
you
is,
know, having a little more shared case because as we know, you know, if you look at the volume going through a lot of things, a 400 megabit connection, it's hard to use that. I mean, or and we could give gigabit, or we could even give a bigger one, and then allow a splitting device to do that. You know, basically you put a
yeah.
router in there. So
Yeah.
I think if we're considering that we've got to run fiber all the way back to you know to add a new MDU that is pretty prohibitive. So and it's not going to happen quickly. So um, maybe ameliorating the service slightly for some of these might be a good way to go. So
We think that might be a solution for this case for 1062. Um, However, there's a little reluctance to say one single strand of fiber or 20 units of 1062 might not be enough. If we take two of them out, that might impact downstream from the Pinckney Pop, which covers all of Varna, Hillside Acres, Ellis Hollow, Snyder Hill, Bethel Grove.
Mhm.
Like the fiber planners really have to know where every house is and where every fiber we have out there is accounted to. So we have enough to do these. We don't want to shortchange the future by solving a small problem today. So like the challenge we've had is the fiber planner resources in the project have been pretty limited. Like they're focused on engineering and construction for the New York State grant that has to be done before the end of the year. And we pulled them or our project lead, Brad Penny, off the project to work on these MDUs, or he outsources to other members of his team. He still has to provide oversight. It's just hours away from the construction implementation, where this is just we can't focus on that. We have to get this New York State construction completed across all of Dryden before the end of the year.
But
Uh,
I thought that Vantive had dedicated somebody to work with these MDUs.
they have, and they've done a lot of work, but there still needs to be some resources on, even beyond that, with fiber planning and with engineering. And it's a lot of work has been done. We're probably close on a few of these, but there's other blockers I'll talk about in a minute too. This is the really reason I brought this up in December to add this to this agenda was it's so complex and there's so many of them that it wasn't like a one slide once a month to give you an update. It was like a deeper dive for understanding this as well as some of the decisions that it's probably a good time for the town board and the Public Broadband Committee to make some decisions on regarding these MDUs. So MDUs on the cost reality side, they can be low cost per unit. Uh, they also could be high cost. So we think of the traditional installation that I showed you at the beginning. We have the drop cable, we have the NID on the exterior of the house, we have the ONU inside the house, and a Wi-Fi device. Then we have to pay for the labor to go up to the utility pole with a bucket truck or to go into the handhole to bring it across the yard, attach it, test it all out, talk to Integrity to get it provisioned, um, and then come back later and bury the line. On average, through the first, I think Amanda and I did this, through the first about 200 installs, it's about $1,000 per install. Matt is doing a revised version now that we have over 500 installs. Like, what's it look like over the last 6 months with the mix of types of installs? Ballpark, it's still about $1,000 for the hardware, drop cable, ONU, optional Wi-Fi devices, and the labor. About $1,000 per install. For a mobile home park with 38 units, there still has to be some install from whatever device we use to get to the actual mobile home, but there will be a construction investment to bring the service all the way into the park, including putting in new utility poles, putting new strand on these poles, putting new fiber on these poles, splicing it together, putting in multi-port devices, and then from there, getting it ready for each individual installation. Now, those individual installs should be a lot lower cost because you're just running the drop cable to the mobile home with a pretty set plan. Uh, but there's still going to be a cost for both the construction piece of it as well as the home installation piece. Apartments have a different level of complexity where how do we get the service to each individual unit? And some of them have existing wiring, some don't. So it's a mix of some of these are going to be lower than average, lower than $1,000 per unit, and some might be higher. Some of them, and Amanda and I have talked about this, it's going to be a lot higher if only one person signs up. But if all 20 units sign up, then it's a lot lower.
Mhm.
So key question on this cost is who is paying for what? As of right now, we are paying for all installations for single family homes within 500 feet of the road. Beyond 500 feet, we charge $2 per foot. That's the only installation charge in the platform today. For MDUs, we haven't really done any. So right now, Dryden Fiber is thinking we're going to make the investment as a internal rule of thumb, probably between Amanda and I making these decisions, as long as it's less than $1,000 or equal to $1,000 per unit, it's probably a break even on the installs on the work. But that's just a starting point. What if it comes in, it's like to provide service to these 25 mobile homes, it's going to cost you 100 grand. Do we still do it? So who pays for what? There's also the legal and access considerations. There's the easements, the outside plant, bringing it to the property, the inside, the buildings. Some of the considerations within this would be the duration. Are these, often they are perpetual or long term because it's a utility. We don't want the next homeowner to say, you know what, I just bought this property. I don't want fiber. Cut it out, take it out. Uh, Access rights. For emergencies, we would like to be able to go in and repair as needed. Is that reasonable to the homeowner? Some of them say, like, I want 72 hours notice before you come on site. Well, that makes it really difficult to provide service to the units within the MDU, whether it's a mobile home park or an apartment building. Um, we would need to be able to access the utility room in some cases, or the property itself if something happens within the property to the line. And then finally, assignment rights. If for whatever reason Trident Fiber becomes an LDC, which is potential in the next 5 to 10 years, do these easements flow through and get assigned to the new entity, or they have to be revisited each time? Some limited, but some easement feedback has been, well, I don't want you to be able to assign it to anyone else. I'm okay having it be you, but if someone else comes in, how do I know they're going to treat us the way you're treating us? Now, this recommendation from our attorneys is avoid negotiating each individual easement because it gets so complex, it's hard to monitor. If there's an outage on this road, we have permission to go and fix that MDU. If it's on this property, we have to wait 72 hours. If it's this one, you got to wait until the next business day. It's better for management of the operation to have it be standard across the board. So here's some policy things to start thinking about as we look at these MDUs. And that would be really helpful for future decision making on this. First is, are we proactively going out to these MDUs, or are we waiting for an apartment dweller to come to us and say, hey, I want service, track down my property owner, landlord, figure out how to get it to me? Or do we knock on doors and say, hey, we're going to be building in your area. We want to start planning this out ahead of time. Next one's cost sharing. Are we funding, and how much do we pay just to get to the building, just to get to the property line? Is this more like the 500 feet or greater cost per dollar or per foot for any MDU? Or do we just say, this is a good investment for us. We're going to get 30 potential customers. We may as well spend the $20,000 to hopefully get them. And over the next, 10, 20, 30 years, this investment will pay for itself. Do we want to do bulk agreements? Do we want to encourage that? And then do we subsidize these harder to serve MDUs like mobile home parks? Do we want to make sure like we're gonna pay a little bit more to reach them to make sure we have access to people who live in mobile home parks versus an apartment building where they have I don't even want to say like less financial strain. Everyone's dealing with financial strain, so is that a factor too in providing service?
So Dave, what was the agreement with the one up the road from me? So we are actually servicing them. I know
Which
we are. So
one, Etna Lane
yeah,
or Congers?
Congers or either of those. So
So Ithaca
I have
Estates,
Congers.
Ithaca Estates is the mobile home park between Kirk and Etna Lane. It used to be
Mm-hmm.
called Congress Trailer Park.
Yeah.
It has about 74 or 75 mobile homes. There's some open lots. We're not tracking the open lots we're not tracking them at all. If people bring in new trailers, we're counting about 74 units there. As of today, we have 9 of those units as customers. This project was completed before I started, where we brought in service, I believe, underground with some poles in the park. The the agreement with them is just is a standard easement for right of access agreement. There is not a set diagram that diagrams out where things are. Um, so that was the first one. Since then, we decided not to go in the direction of just going and doing whatever we want in parks because other park owners are like, we don't want you to just come and do whatever you want. We want to be involved with these projects. So it's kind of a unique case. Same thing with this Shade Grove
Mhm.
at behind on Pinckney Road behind Brewers. That was our first mobile home park right across from the Pop. I believe that was also done on a handshake, and we tried to get them to sign a right of access agreement, and they said we have some issues with the installation. We currently don't have any customers in that park, and we've reached out to them, and they haven't responded to our outreach. So we actually don't have any paper within any agreement with them, even though we do have service available in that park.
So if all 74 customers wanted to go online, do we have enough fiber feeding that?
I
Or
believe
would you?
so. It was
Oh,
something that
okay.
Clarity and Hunt worked on. Um, again, right before I started, they were like, "How do we provide service?" And they made some plan. I know that plan did not go to the property owner with like, "Here's the exact way we're going to be bringing the infrastructure to provide service to all the units." It was just worked on. It was built out. It's a good question. I'm sure that Matt can dig into the Clarity bills and the Hunt bills to see if we can find how that was billed and what the
Well,
cost per install for those to see what that looks like. It's a good question.
and if we've got 74 units, should we and we have the fiber and we can run it, we should concentrate trying to get more of those people on
Yes.
board. So, because it's an easy, if it's so if we put that infrastructure, we got to capitalize on some more of that. So, uh,
So
mm,
it's easy. We have 9 customers right now. At the peak, we've had 14. I believe Matt and Amanda, who have access to our billing system, could tell you the total number of Ithaca Estates customers we had since we started. It's probably over 20 and maybe over 25. It tends to be short-term
yeah.
customers for us. Um, in addition, the highest number of termination for non-payment is from that park. So we have not accelerated the marketing there at this time. It's available. People know it's there. It's on the website. It's in the green zone. People sign up. We're happy to do that.
Mhm.
We're not really marketing across the board anywhere because we're only at 30% of the total parcels in the town. But given the turnover and customer base and the $1,000 installation and the payback time, which is we get about 50 bucks a month from them. So it takes about 20 months of being a customer to pay for that installation on average. We haven't been pushing to drive a lot of business through that right now. We're like, what's the good news, Dave? um, there's a lot of good news. I mean, we have 9 customers there. We could get more. We also have, we're also coming hopefully to the end of our first reimbursement request, which is with the state, which has required a lot of back and forth, which means a lot of hours of Matt's time and Amanda's time to get all the financials and all the other paperwork in place to the state. We can start to do some other financial research questions with Matt as a resource on the project. So what was the total cost to build out to the Congers Ithaca Estates Park when Hunt designed it and Clarity did the installs to get it ready? What's been the average cost per installs for that park? It's probably less than 1,000 because they're not very long drops and there generally should be a pretty short installation time from the distance from where the multi-port device is to the individual units. If it turns out those installs only cost us 500 bucks on average, it's all, it's a lot. more affordable, even with the turnover, to bring those customers on. You writing this down, Matt? Uh, the AI Zoom notes will also make a note of these tasks, so we make sure they don't get dropped. But it is one of the questions with these mobile home parks is, do we make this investment? Do we make the installation investment over and over with the turnover? And do we worry about the break-even cost if we're providing this service?
Regarding the turnover, I guess this goes back to a question that I asked a few meetings ago. So if somebody, you know, has the service to a specific address and then they terminate it, but somebody else moves in later and wants to reactivate it, the cost for installing a second time is lower, right?
Much lower.
It's
So,
very
I mean,
low.
Almost zero,
okay.
depending on the relationship. And Matt does a great job because they typically will contact billing to cancel or support to cancel. It'll get to Matt, and there's a bit of a process of, do you know who's coming in next as the next renter? Can you leave the equipment there? Do they want the service? Can we just give it right to them? Then we just have to cut over with Netegrity on the support side, and we pay them a flat fee per month, so there's no installation cost charged to us. If they return the equipment to the town hall, and then Clarity has to bring the same equipment back to them and test it out, we got to pay Clarity for an hour or so of that time, but not the equipment cost.
So I guess in some sense, the fact that, the turnover may be high and that people are not subscribing individually for a long time, I mean, as long as somebody eventually, goes into that address and subscribes later, the cost will still get recovered. It just may be slightly less efficient than people.
I know what you're saying. I agree. Yeah. I think, and Connor has the list of every customer we've ever had in the parks. We could look through. My guess is there has been, like I said, probably 25 different customers in that park. 9 are active today, but we probably reached 20 different trailers, 20 different mobile homes in that park. Like, just because there's turnover doesn't mean that the next customer is in that same trailer. It could be the trailer next door or the mobile home next door. Now that one's already ready to go wiring wise if the new tenant wants it. So it's not a one-to-one so far, but that's
Of
I'm
course,
sure you expect that. Yeah.
yeah. But eventually, they're all
Eventually all 74 will have signed up at least
right,
once.
right.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll just add in, I think when we've had this conversation with customers that are leaving, because they're moving usually in pretty much all cases, we do ask if they know who's coming in. If they do, great, we work with it. If they don't, I err on the side of I'd rather have the equipment back than lose it. Because the equipment, is at least $150, just the equipment itself. So I hesitate to leave it in an apartment or a trailer that we might never get it back again, or it might get used, might get thrown away. I don't know. So that's basically just the tactic we've used so far, as we're learning through this process.
I think that's the same tactic that Spectrum or Charter uses, which is when you leave your house as a renter or a homeowner, you return the equipment. The next person moves in, they have to go back and get it installed. Now the
Yeah.
cable to the house stays the same. It's just the actual box.
Yeah, but they just go pick up the equipment. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
But I'm sure Matt could look through the Clarity invoices and see of the number of times where we're installing to a house that already has service and Clarity had to go there to drop off a new modem and Wi-Fi device, what our charge for that installation was. It should be like an hour of labor or 2 hours at most,
Yeah, I think that's probably about right, just without digging into it right now. Yeah.
which might be about the same cost as the hardware we're saving from having it disappear if they're bringing the hardware back. So um, we have as Amanda said, we've been reluctant to leave equipment not knowing who the next customer is,
Mhm.
because even if it's $150, $200, that's money we can save by reusing that equipment again. Um, okay, that's a good conversation on some of the cost sharing. So some of the risks within MDUs, landlord refusal or delays. This has happened a couple of different times where they're just like, I don't like what you're doing. I don't aesthetically, I don't like where it is. I'll get back to you. Uh, Oftentimes, I don't even want to say oftentimes because every one of these is case by case. We have a mobile home park we're working with. We thought we had a plan verbally. We wrote it up. The write-up was not consistent with the verbal plan. So then we had to rewrite it. In the rewrite, we sent it. He said, "This looks good except for one question." We answered that question. He's like, I don't remember if that's how we discussed it to be. I don't want to sign this because the timing of interest, on-site visit, drawing up the diagram, the spec sheets, the staking sheets, which is the term the engineers use to say this is exactly where we're going to build aerial or underground, to the property owner for them to sign off on it. It has to be really short because they are busy doing other things. This is just one of 7 utilities adding to their park. Um, that can cause delays. We have at least one where everything seems like it's ready to go except for them to sign off on the plan. And the plan is documented of what they verbally agreed to last time we spoke to them. Existing exclusive provider agreements, that does happen with some of our competing providers, notably with Poets Landing. Charter Spectrum made a big investment in that property. We cannot get into those buildings. The building owners do not want to have another provider come in underground into the building, to the utility rooms, to the individual apartments. They've already made that investment with coax, with Spectrum. So that locks out all those units in all those buildings across from the high school. Internal wiring disputes. Uh, there's a couple. One is the one at 1062 where it's less of a dispute as of than uh, we believe we can use their Ethernet because the owner still owns the building who built it in 1999. However, there's also coax in that building and in another building in town. We're not sure who owns the coax from the utility room up to the individual apartments. It's possible that Spectrum owns that coax, and we can't just unplug their cable modem in the apartment and take the other end of it and plug it into our coax electronics that plugs into our fiber optic network. And in many of those cases, the building owner doesn't know who owns the internal wiring or cabling. And to err on the side of caution, they're like, it might be owned by Spectrum. We don't want to touch it. We don't want to lose our relationship with Spectrum for the other 19 apartments because we're giving it to one apartment to use for Trident Fiber. Expectations and decisions is also a factor. Tenants originally in these MDUs were put in the green zone, and right away they were like, great, I want service. I sign up. And then we have to work with landlords to get access to the building, determine the fiber count, fiber planning at the pole, determine the electronics in the building to provide service to each of the individual units, the wiring, existing wiring or new wiring. All these things take resources, expertise, and time. And the tenants were like, why isn't it live? I'm in the green zone. We have since, probably about 4 months ago, moved all these MDUs to purple. So on the map, there's a little bit less of a question of like, why can't I just get it right now? But it still doesn't mean it's easy. Just because it's purple, it just means like it's going to take a while for us to figure this out. Uh, and the last one is construction scheduling. It hasn't been a huge issue, although that's because we don't have an agreement signed to have a MDU construction partner to go do this work. Um, Yeah, our construction resource with Syracuse Utilities is focused on constructing the main network, not these MDUs. Any questions on these risks? Okay. So some recommendations. Prioritize MDUs early. As soon as we know there's an MDU, we want to reach out and start talking to the owner because of the revenue potential and servicing. Like our goal is to provide service to every person, every home, every family, every apartment, every business in the town, not just the single family owner occupied structures. Use a standard agreement. Here's the easement, and here's the property owner right of access agreement without much negotiation. That way it's easy to manage these instead of having like you can only come during the work week or only 9 to 5 or any other terms. Uh, Determine and target internal wiring support, what we can do and what we want them to do. If it's a bulk agreement, it might be easier for us to bring fiber drop all the way to each individual unit. For one-off individual installs, it might be best to do Ethernet, especially where it has to do with wiring through buildings with glass cables from the utility rooms up to each unit. And then it's dependent on the building. Some of them have open channels and chases. Some of them, they're really closed off. There's no way to get there. Pilot a small number of MDUs. We want to focus on 2 mobile home parks and 2 apartment buildings and see how those go. We haven't done any of those yet in the last couple of years. And then finally, um, I recommend avoiding overcommitting any bulk deals. There's just too many variables within these bulk deals, and we're not sure how they'll play out. It'd be good to get one up and running with INHS and then determine where we go next, but not focus on that as part of our process. Any thoughts on this recommended approach from the committee?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm comfortable with avoiding the bulk deals because there would be new things coming on. So if there's another Poet's Landing, we would want to be interested in doing that, whether we do it as a bulk or we do it as a individual. I think we shouldn't not do that. But that would be for new construction coming on. And so if there's a large new construction, I really think that we should consider that, not necessarily avoid it. So
I agree with that with the large new construction because it's often, you know, sometimes it's really good if we can get in while the building's being built.
Yes, and there probably should be a difference between getting in when they're building the building and offering bulk deals.
Right.
The bulk deal with INHS is a 5 year with a 5 year renewal at a substantial amount per month per year. But when it comes to the break even number, they're paying us for 24 units per month. Like that's the break even number. And they're going to have 53 units using the service. So it's like we're giving away 30 units for free every month. That's substantial revenue for 5 years by doing a bulk. Now we're going to get the minimum amount per building once those buildings come online, which is good. But financially, um, we haven't modeled out if every MDU became bulk and we cut the revenue in half. Uh, but we could model it out probably later in the year once we get through more of the finance side of the New York State grants and the reimbursements and inventory and acquisition, all the other things that accounting is doing right now, finance.
but I do believe that the IHS one isn't it low cost housing, so I think there's a sort of community interest here, maybe. It's not a huge for-profit enterprise.
That's true.
So I think we
We
want
we
to
think
take that
so.
into I think we need to take that into consideration. So
Yeah, I mean,
But
that
there's
one that one is unique. We
yeah.
matched the incumbent partner
right.
on pricing to
The
be able to earn that business.
the one there's a big one which sorry, I don't know the status of it at the moment, but there's that big one, that Luceni project in the village, right? That could start construction uh, sometime in the near future. Uh, that's going to be interesting to see what that project does.
That's the one that's west of North Street, north of Ellis,
Yes.
north of Pine Ridge. Yeah,
Yep.
Ray might still be here. I think it's like 500 units.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah,
big complex, and that's why I think that's one of those cases that if there's an opportunity to get in while it's being built, I think we'd be short-sighted not to try to take it.
Sure. That would lead to a complete separate part of the conversation with these new constructions, which is um, how far do we extend our network into those buildings that we're paying for?
Right.
Like,
Exactly right.
do
Yeah.
the utility room, do we put the server in the room that splits off to the 50 units at INHS? Are we wiring? Are we paying for the wiring? Are they hiring an electrician to do the wiring? Is it glass
Ro-
drops to each individual unit, or is it Ethernet from the utility rooms to each unit? Who pays
Right.
for that? It,
Yep.
it, it just adds more questions. I
That's
don't
right.
know. I, I'm not sure, given our setup, what the best method is to making those decisions with, the 14 of us here, the 7 members of the Broadband Committee. Maybe there's a smaller subgroup that comes up with recommendations per individual project. What's the guideline of how much we're willing to spend? And then who owns that material inside those buildings if something happens? Are we then responsible for 500 units in that Lucente project, all the way down to where it plugs into the wall, all the way down to each individual Wi-Fi device? Like, how much do we want to take on with those MDUs?
Do
Right.
do we know what our competitors are doing here, Dave? What Spectrum does, or with that kind of case? I mean, Lucenti has a lot of homes, mainly in Lansing, I think. So,
It's a good question. Anecdotally, from what property owners have told us, is that Spectrum did the work. They brought in the coax from the street, they brought it into the building, they wired it up into each individual unit, either interior when it was open or exterior. Um, they drilled the holes and they plugged everything in and they paid for it. Now, it's as a completely separate conversation from these MDUs, which Dan and I have been working on, is Spectrum can do a lot of that work because they're granted as a utility providing a public service of television to go and do that work on a building without the property owner's permission or oversight,
mhm.
aesthetically or otherwise. They pay for it, Spectrum, they do all the work, they bring the service to the units, and they walk away. Because of them doing that, there are a handful of property owners, landlords in town, who have basically said, absolutely not. I don't want any fiber in my building because I spent thousands of dollars making it look good aesthetically on the outside. And I want wires and cables and holes drilled all over the place, which becomes a whole separate negotiation uh, challenge with what could this look like? How do we brainstorm a solution that's going to function for them? How do we make sure the easement doesn't vary too much, or the right of access agreement doesn't vary too much, but still allows for the property owner to have control over the look of the installation?
I think we all want aesthetically good-looking buildings in Dryden. So.
I mean, going back to that first diagram or images of that installation, you know, there already were 3 or 4 other utilities coming to that home at that location. So adding a third or fourth box looks okay.
Mhm.
If you have a building, and again, we'll talk about MDUs, where all the other utilities are coming in through the core of the building, and you have to slap an exterior NID on the outside of each individual unit, it's not a good look. Like honestly, like if
Right.
I was a homeowner, I'd be like, I don't know if I want like these little boxes all over the outside of my building. So then we have a challenge because we get to a dead end where the homeowner's like the building owner. It's like I don't want these things. I don't want you drilling holes all over my building, and there's no way to get inside because it's all sealed off. And this is not like theoretical. This is a specific problem with one of our green zone MDUs. So next steps, identify some top MDU targets. I think we've identified these. This has been we've talked to some of the landlords already quite a bit. We have agreements in place. The cost modeling is part of the next steps to figure out where and how do we break even on these, and then come back with some updates. The key blocker for a couple of these has been the MDU construction contract. For the lower, for the Fall Creek Park in Etna, near the Etna Community Center, there are, I believe, 38 units. We determined the best method to bring them service was utility poles, adding 7 utility poles to the park, bringing strand from the road to these poles, lashing fiber to that strand, splicing it together, installing or constructing multi-port devices to those poles, and then running drop cables from those poles to each individual unit. We have a handful, maybe 3 or 4 of those 38 have already signed up. The property owner has said, this sounds good. I'm okay with this. We asked Syracuse Utilities for a quote to do this work, and they came back and it was above the threshold of financials to just award the work to them to go do it. Last fall, in December and January of this year, we put that work out to bid with each of the tasks in the construction project that Syracuse identified as an individual item to be bid on in a proposal. We received 2 proposals, Matt? 3? 2? At least 2.
I think it's two.
Uh, and Clarity Connect had the lowest bid to do this work. That happened around February 10th. I have a draft of the MDU contract that specifies here that's how MDUs would be constructed, taking in the pricing from Clarity into that contract. It's with Nate, the town attorney, right now for final review, with a few components that we're looking at. One is if we award work to Clarity, and Tom Hardy's from Clarity is on the call. If we award work to them, what's the commencement requirement? They have to start work within how many days of being awarded this work? And then what's the completion requirement? So these things need to be part of the agreement with them as we implement this partnership. Hopefully, this is finalized before the end of April. I mean, hopefully it's done in March, but we're running out of days. Hopefully it's finalized in April. The town board provides authorization to sign off on this agreement, and Clarity can go in and do the installation of these poles, strand, fiber, multi-port devices, and begin installs in April or May. And that would be our first park underway. The second one, go ahead, Graham.
Second, you've got one already, so come on. Well, it's a
Right. The first one is
so,
actually planning it out, working with the property owner and having it documented.
Mhm.
It's not impossible that both Shady Grove or Shade Tree and Ithaca Estates could be like, "No, I don't like what you guys are doing," and we might not have any recourse because we don't have a clear agreement of what we're doing in the park on either of those parks, and nothing is signed at all. We have a right of access agreement for Ithaca Estates. We don't have any agreement signed with the other one, Shady Grove. That would be our first one following this model of having the property owner agree to where and how we're constructing it. There's one factor we don't have for Fall Creek Park, which is the fiber planning to know when we come off those poles and there is that 8-port device, how many ports are we using up for that park? And how is that going to splice back all the way up back to the pop? But that would be the first one. I put these as more discussion. We've kind of covered a little bit of these. Um, where should we be flexible versus firm on the easements and the right of access agreements? How aggressive should we be based on the property, based on the tenants requesting service? We have had some tenants request service two, three, four times, and we cannot get the landlord to come to the table. Like, we do not have the ability that a Spectrum or Charter does currently with New York State law to just move forward and begin the construction. In talking to these landlords, it doesn't feel like it's in best interest of our project or the town. Just march right in on these MDUs and do the work. We need to have a partnership with them to go and build where they're okay with it. It feels like a lot of the pushback we're getting is because Spectrum had this ability to just go in and do whatever they wanted in these MDUs. And then finally, determining what the level of investment should be, what's appropriate to the size of this parcel, this project, the number of units, short-term investment, long-term return.
So Dave, who currently is having these conversations with the landlords, and how are these conversations happening? I mean, are they in-person conversations? Are they email conversations? What?
It's a good question. This had been a bulk of the work that Gleeman and Tracy Monell was doing when he was here up through
Right,
September. The challenge we've had is almost none of those conversations were written down.
right,
So there was no documentation about what he said or suggested and what was implemented or what was agreed to by landlords or what was verbally agreed to. We have been trying to track down any notes from Gleeman since September, and they've refused to provide any documentation of any of these conversations that they said they had. Since then, I've been doing a bulk of these. I've been doing all these. There's no one else to do it until we hired Connor earlier this month. I've been the point person when I wasn't focused on ongoing operations and construction. MDU's taking third position to focus on these when there's extra time available to reach out, schedule the on-site visits, talk to them, chase them down, um, and try to make some progress. This will be a major part of Connor's work in the project as our account manager is to have these relationships with these property owners. But I want to make sure that we're giving him the right guidance, both me as executive director, but also the broadband committee and the town board to say, you can do this, you shouldn't do this to get these things going.
yeah, because I think yeah, somehow we need to. It sounds like in many of these cases we just need to be able to convince people and be truthful about it. That you know, look, we're not going to do what Spectrum did, and and you know, we will work with you to come up with the best possible solution and most aesthetically pleasing solution within reason, though, because in some of these buildings, it really shouldn't be us putting in the infrastructure. It really should be the it should be on the building, but depending on how they're going to run it. But
Yeah, I mean, that's ideally they own some of it in the building, like beyond the modem, like
right,
that they're responsible for it because especially if it's inside the walls, like we don't we'd like to have them and their tenants be like agnostic of the service provider, like they can use whatever they want. We're in the utility room. If they want it, we can plug it in. But we don't have this experience. And so far, we have not seen a lot of support from Hunt or from Vantage in saying, like, we know how to do this. Like, we know exactly what to do to provide service to the variety of MDUs, whether it's
right, right.
apartment buildings or mobile home parks. It's like they're just working through the dark like we are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that
what's
example you used of the coax in the building, right? We don't know who owns the coax. I don't know that I'd want to use the coax anyway, but the
Well, that's another the question of degradation of
yeah,
potential service is
yeah,
also a factor.
Right.
Um,
And so
like
I don't, the coax is not a question, but if there's Ethernet in the building, it's not Spectrum that owns the Ethernet cables that are in the building. I
no,
wouldn't think. So if there's Ethernet running from a utility room up to an apartment, I wouldn't expect that would be owned by Spectrum. But I suppose it's possible, but I wouldn't expect that.
the issue with that particular project is that there's 20 units, 4 buildings. Each apartment has, I believe, 4 Ethernet ports or
Yeah.
5, depending if it's a 1 or 2 bedroom. There's like a port in the kitchen, there's a port in the dining room area, there's a port in the living room area. When Scott and I were there on site, we tested the port that was the best place to have the service, which was like at a desk in the kitchen. And we could not get a firm connection from that Ethernet port to the utility room. Then we tried another one that was behind the current desk of the tenant, like in the living room area.
Hmm.
And that one didn't work. We couldn't find a connection from that Ethernet port to the utility room. We didn't use the one in the bedroom. We found one in the behind like the couch or the bookshelf. That port worked back to the utility room. So even if there are Ethernet ports in the walls, there's not a guarantee that we can find one that works from the apartment to the
Yeah, you
utility
don't know.
Mm.
You don't know because it sounds like that was probably put in when the building was constructed. That's probably Ethernet lines that they ran through the building
Yes,
when they
1999.
constructed the building. And
That's right.
and yeah, and we have no idea, right, what they did. True. Yeah.
So
Okay.
in that case, so like every not just is every MDU is a little different and the wiring is a little different. In this case, it's basically like I wanted a 4 shot or maybe better. But we have like 4 shots per apartment that one of those Ethernet ports is going to work to connect from the utility room to the apartment. And
Yeah.
if we hit one in that apartment, now we have to hit one 19 more times to provide an equal level of service to every
Yeah.
apartment in that building. Huge amount of risk to advertise and say, hey, like we can now provide
Yeah.
service to apartments, to your apartment at Pine Ridge. Maybe.
Yeah.
We hope.
Yeah.
But if the Ethernet ports are all not working, and none of them have ever been used in production, um,
Yeah.
it's
Was there not like a closet in that residence area that had a termination for the 5 different ports? Because
no.
like I've been in an apartment before where it had multiple ports, only one worked, but I found a closet that basically only had the one port wired.
Hmm.
I mean, possibly, but we looked. I mean, the tenant was there. We tried not to be too super invasive as he showed us where the ports were that he knew about, and we tested them until we found one that worked. It's from what the property owner told us, and he's the one who constructed the building 26 years ago. He said that all of those ports all have a direct line back to that utility room.
I feel like there should have been some type of termination in that actual apartment, and then only one cable would go back to the utility room.
Um,
Now, most if they're constructing network correctly, they should have had home runs back for every port. But
so, like I
who
said,
knows?
there's 4 buildings and 4 utility rooms. Each utility room has, if you're on camera, you can see, has a hole in the ceiling as big as a softball, and it's completely filled with Ethernet cables coming out of it because there's somewhere
Oh,
between 20 and 25 Ethernet cables coming through that hole as one big bulk. And once it goes into the ceiling, it splits off to the 4 or 5 units. And at the units, it splits off to the 4 or 5 ports. So they're not clearly labeled. It requires someone to be
you need to
running the
tone it
test
out.
in the apartment and then going back to the utility room to test until they find the wire that works. Um, it's possible that other apartment buildings are set up differently, and there is a single location in a closet within the unit. But in this case, from the owner who built the building, that's not how
Hmm.
he configured it. But it doesn't mean that's not how it could be in a different building.
Yeah, and it's highly likely it's just a connector at the end that's bad, or it hasn't been punched down quite right, or connected. I mean, those are resolvable. I mean, people like Clarity and stuff, I suspect, can tone those out in a not fairly quickly and identify what's working and what's not working. So
Yeah, I was
Yes.
say that we
Uh,
we can certainly run a beeper on it. Basically, we can mouse over. So it's easy to find. Relative, you have to be on both ends, but we can discover what is actively running or not. We can also pull out the plug and see if the wires. I've often seen wires on those that are not hooked to the right colors or something. There's various things can happen, but none
yeah,
of them
but
are big problems. And I think when they went out there that one day, were you there, Dave? That you did find out of the five wires, I think you found one that was working.
Yeah, for like of the 20 apartments, we went to apartment number 20, and of the five wires, we tested three, and that was the third one that worked. Now, in all likelihood, we're going to get super lucky, and every single person who lives in that place who signs up, and we send Clarity there to do the test, will find at least one of the five ports that we can activate and run service to. Uh, but
and
we
and
we're,
and
our plan is not to go invasively or not to every single one of the 19 apartments in advance of telling them we have service. We're going to roll the dice and say, great, now number apartment 12 signed up. Let's test it out and see if we can provide them service. This is just
uh,
like one of
uh,
the many cases. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this can be overcome. I think in this case, Dave, because if communications to the tenant and the owner to let them know that, oh, we have to test and we have to have viable Ethernet from here to here, which is sort of your responsibility. That will help tone them out the first time and maybe do slight corrections, not repull cable, but but the service is contingent on having that available for us them. So, and people understand this. So I think, so I wouldn't, I think you're a little too worried about um,
The chance of
as
these
somebody's
ports
trying to
working.
sign up and then we just can't really give them the service. And then we've got to be honest with them that there is a risk and we're going to do our best, but it is dependent
Yeah.
on an Ethernet running from here to there. If that works, we'll get you serviced. And I think that can be done. Um,
There was a brief point when that was not functioning. The Ethernet ports solution wasn't an option, and we asked about doing anything to provide new runs. And in this particular case, the owner was like, no way. There's no way you're opening up my floors, ceilings, walls to do anything.
yeah, that's right.
What's there now is what is going to be there forever.
Mhm.
Like there's no desire to do any other infrastructure between the utility rooms and the individual units. And it's a really nice building. It's been there for 26 years. It looks like it's brand new. Like because he's limited the amount of external infrastructure additions. Um,
Yeah. But we can easily split. You can split from the fiber into Ethernet. That's definitely doable. So
it's doable. We're still working on what the technology is to do that split. So Tom has been a great partner for us from Clarity to help solve some of these. Vantage also was helpful, um, but there's a challenge of how to get the 72 count fiber on the street on the trail to the individual units, convert that from fiber into four different Ethernet cables or five in that utility room. So we're working on how those splitters could work. I'll send you this deck because we're at time. This is a definition of each of the categories. As you work on these projects, they go from left to right as we're doing our tasks. If we look at the um, list of projects in the second column, you'll see the green is good to go. It is not green all the way across. We are still working on. So this is the mobile home parks part one. These are the mobile home parks part two. You'll note none of them are green. These are the apartment buildings part one. None of them are green, ready to go. These are more apartment buildings or MDUs, still not quite ready. So we're working our way, but all of these require all these steps of property owner, outside plant, inside plant, engagement, sign off, construction, and then we can turn it green for customers. So again, these are the conversations we can have together at one of our future um, broadband committee meetings. I want to give you this as a starting point to think about what's the state of the MDUs today and kind of a foundational of problems, solutions, ideas, and options. Um, any last words? I know we're at time. We try to keep to the time. We're going to meet in a couple of weeks to look at the March numbers. We can continue MDUs as a conversation in a month for the April meeting, or we can just find some other way to have that conversation. It's really up to the Broadband Committee how you want to use this conversation we started.
I'm wondering if it might be useful to have individual conversations about the individual MDUs.
With the committee.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to have the committee sit down with Connor and me, come up with some strategies about implementing these. Some of these are just running out of cycles sometimes on uh, construction, operations, installations, MDUs, and which is one of the reasons why Connor is here to help spread out some of that work so it's not all getting bottlenecked in my office.
Yeah, and I think we also need to. I think where it's easy to work on is the newer ones that we think are coming down the pike, and make sure we're at least going to cover that, so we know at least what kind of agreement that we would want to make with Lucenti or whatever those, and whether those are custom. I mean, if it's that many units, it's fine to have a custom agreement. So. I think so. I mean, but we want to be prepared there. We don't want them to go up and then have to do some afterthought. And then concentrate on the ones that we can easily do or we can identify. Like if we know that X number of them have Ethernet or whatever, that sort of thing, can we come up with a solution that's sort of standardized to this? And here's your DMARC. I mean, it gets back to what Tony and we sort of talked a while back about where should we draw the line where fiber owns it or not. So, and how much troubleshooting we'll do with that. So,
Yeah, I mean that's a big question. Like,
and you need to set those we need to actually set out. And I thought we'd sort of agreed to where that was, but maybe I was wrong.
yeah, I don't think we finalized we're ending here because every building and owner is so different in their technical ability to make decisions and do things that will actually service their tenants versus them saying like, I'm not going to do that. Like I'm not going to do that thing that you're recommending doing. I'm going to do something else. And then we have to figure out how to work around what they own versus what we own.
Yeah.
I'll share this deck if you have questions. If you think we can do this, we can try to do some point work on some of these, like Arthur suggested. We can do that when we get together in April. These are not going to be all solved between now and the next time we meet. Look at that. There's a lot of these. These are just in the green zone right now, and that's only about 30% of the town. Now, that does contain both villages, which is where a lot of these are apartments, but there will probably be, before we're done, 50 more of these across Greater Dryden, as well as in the Caroline. Wow. Well, thanks for your willingness to be educated on MDUs. And if you have questions, like I said, let me know. If you have ideas, we're happy to hear them.
Thanks for the work. This has been informative.
Thanks, Joel.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Amanda, Connor, Matt, for all your work on getting this stuff happening so we can share this with everyone. Thanks, Cassie. Thanks, everyone.